Today I'll be setting up my Absolute 40 bow from scratch. I actually set this thing up already once when I first got it, obviously. But when I was changing mods, I managed to damage the string, so now I got a brand new string from the same maker that makes the factory strings on these bows. And I'll be replacing the string, and with that I'll have to tune the whole thing from scratch. So before I tune it though, I'll have to set it up, and this video will hopefully detail that process. So first thing I gotta do is take off the string and then put on the new string. On that string I'll have to figure out where the nocking point is going to be, where the arrow rest will have to be centered. Actually, I'll be getting a new rest as well. I also ordered the biter arrow rest, mostly because the spot hog that I have doesn't go as long as I need it to go. So anyway, I'll figure out where and how to center the new rest, nocking point, peep, kisser button, D-loop, and I'll fire a couple arrows just to see where I am, and then I'll likely do some more in-depth tuning at the range. I only get maybe like 10 yards here, but at the range I get up to 80 yards indoor, so I'll be tuning this thing over there and we'll see what happens. So let's get started. Okay, so the bow's in the press, it's ready to go. I have the new string here. The only thing that I do to it was add a speed button, a speed knock that I'm going to use as a kisser button. Other than that, the string is as is. I was just careful not to add or remove any strings from any twists from it, even though that shouldn't really matter too much because during tuning likely twists will be added or removed. So let's get going. Making sure these are roughly the same length, and they are pretty much bang on as expected. Okay, that happens all the time. Dampener that keeps coming off, it's no big deal. And here we go, brand new string on a brand new bow. Everything looks good. I'm just going to pull it once by hand. Again, not recommending you do this. If you do it, be careful not to derail anything. Okay. Looks good, feels good. Alright. So next we'll be moving out all the bells and whistles, so moving my peep and everything else. Actually, before that, I will figure out where to put the nocking point. Then I'll replace the rest, put the new one on there. So let's get on figuring out where the nocking point should be. Alright, so these bows are fully symmetrical, top to bottom, left to right, meaning the bow's power stroke is right down the middle of the bow. What that would suggest is that the nocking point should also be right in the middle of the bow, and to do that, to find that very middle of the bow, we'll need 2 fixed points on each cam, basically 1 per cam. We'll measure the distance between the two divided in half, and that's exactly where the nocking point will be. To do this, I'll use a square to mark my fixed points on the cams, Then once I figure out the nocking point, I'll mark it with a knock, and let's see what happens. Oh, the speed sleeves that are usually much closer to the cams, I've moved them away, and I'll be putting them back as soon as I'm done with this. Alright, so now I'm marking the first cam. This is the top cam. So with the bow square to the string, and for reference point I'm using this this hole. So the inside edge of that hole and parallel to the string here, I'll just mark a line on the cam. And there we have it. I'm going to repeat the same thing on the bottom cam, and then I'll just measure the distance between the two. Okay, so the same thing happens on the bottom cam. That's the reference hole that I'm using. Inner edge parallel to the string, and I'll just mark a little line there. And there we have it. Alright, so I have my two reference points. Now I'm going to measure the distance between the two. I got 92 centimeters. So 92 centimeters, a half of that would be 46 precisely. So get me 46 centimeters. That is right here. Okay, just make sure it's the same 46 centimeters the other way. And we're good. Alright, so the bow's in the vise, the nocking point has been determined. All I gotta do is tie it down. I'm using a method that's been described in Archery Talk. I'm not going to go into details as to how I'm doing it. It's described on the website much better, and I'll include the link to the thread in the description of the video. So I'll just get started. I'm using a BCY 3D. The yellow is going to be the actual nocking point. The black one I'm using just to pull through. So I'm going to make equal knots, top and bottom. According to the description online, 5 to 7 is enough. And that's what I'll be doing. trim the ends. Do the same thing the other end. Okay. That's that. All I gotta do now is and there we have it. Alright, so next on the agenda is replacing the arrow rest and centering. You will notice that for any other bow, this would go the other way. First we would put the rest, center it, make sure it's like a certain height, then knock down, use a level to figure out where the knocking point would be. But again, because of the symmetry of the bow, we know that the knocking point has to be down the middle, provided that the rest can go low enough to give parallel arrow given the knocking point. This one couldn't, so when I was using the spot hog, I was actually doing the typical bow setup, so first the rest, then the knocking point. But now with this new rest that can actually go as low as I need it to go, I know that I want to set up my knocking point first, already done that, and then I'll replace this and center it. Alright, a little trick that I do with everything I mount on my bows, I put some scotch tape or some plastic tape on the inside of all the accessories so that when I install it on the bow never gets damaged. This is especially handy when you're installing a bow, installing accessories on a bow that's been powder coated. These are anodized, so they're a little less susceptible to damage, but still, you want to protect your bow. Make sure you tape your accessories with some scotch tape. Already done that here. So now all I gotta do is add it in. The really nice thing about this, in addition to going super low, is that it allows for quite a bit of travel back and forth. So I can torque tune as much as I need. So I know where the previous one was. I need this one a little bit further in. So I'll just eyeball that, and if I need it any further, I will address that during tuning. Okay, so we're good there. Next is going to be centering and vertical adjustment. So next is horizontal centering of the rest. For that you can use a caliper and measure the width of your tunnel and then center that right down the middle. Again, everything with these bows is centered to the middle of the bow. So the width of the tunnel, the blade needs to come right in the middle. Or a trick that I learned from a guy who knows these bows inside out and who also happens to be a staff shooter for OK Archery. He said create a card that's going to be exactly the width of your tunnel and then divide that in half. So the idea is to center the blade right with the middle of the tunnel, and that's what this card is going to show. So I'm going to do that right now. And this is just a fairly rough centering. The rest will be adjusted during tuning. So we'll do some walkback tuning, and then all the horizontal adjustments are going to be done in a lot more detail. Yep. That looks good. Alright, so next will be adjustment of the rest for height. I'm adjusting for the arrows that I'm actually shooting. These are Nano Pros. So I'm just going to knock an arrow to the nocking point, for which I know that it's right down the middle. And I'll need to lower the rest enough so that this arrow is 100% parallel. So to do that, first I'll need to put the bow in a vertical position. And to do this, you can use any of the million ways. Some people use these levels, so they attach on the string, and then the bow can be centered left and right. Or you can use a more primitive and probably more accurate way to center your bow, like horizontally position your bow, and that's using a plumb bob. So that's what I'm gonna do, and then I'll use the level as a secondary check. So first I'm going to suspend the plumb bob off the top cam. This should be about right. And the level confirms that. Okay, so to make sure that the arrow is also horizontal, I have this other little level. This looks good. If there's a need for changing any of this, it'll show during tuning. So for now, we're good. Alright, so the nocking point has been set, the rest has been installed and centered. The last thing I really need on this bow before I can fire off a couple arrows is a D-loop. And for that there's about 1 billion videos online, so I'm not going to make another one. I'll just tie the D-loop and then I'll just go and shoot the bow. So I, in addition to the D-loop, I also put in a peep. So now the boat is fully done, ready to shoot. All I gotta do is slap on a sight and fire a couple arrows. So let's go do that. Alright, so this thing feels like before, which is good. I think next I'm going to take it to the range and make sure it actually shoots like before. I will definitely do some walkback tuning. I'll do some torque tuning, and I'll check for creep tune. Like I'll creep tune. Last time I did that, I just basically checked for torque and like creep, but none of that would actually impact the bow. So we'll see if that stays the same. I'll be surprised if it doesn't, honestly. This bow shoots well out of the box, and just by changing a string, not much has changed on the bow. I mean, I replaced a brand new string with another brand new string, made by the same guy of the same specs, set up the exact same way. So I really don't expect anything to change. But I'll check that, and I might actually do another video with all the tuning steps that I do. If you have any questions, comments, or message me, I'll try to answer. And good luck.